The sun beat down mercilessly on the Arizona desert as Jake Henderson guided his horse through the rocky terrain. His weathered face showed the lines of a man who had spent 30 years working cattle ranches across the Southwest. The year was 1952, and Jake had been hired to help round up stray cattle that had wandered into Apache territory near the Superstition Mountains. His horse, a sturdy paint named Thunder, picked its way carefully between the prickly pear cacti and scattered boulders. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow with his bandana and squinted against the glare. The cattle had been spotted 3 days ago near a waterhole that bordered both ranch land and the Apache reservation. It was delicate territory, requiring respect and caution. Jake had worked with Apache cowboys before and had learned to appreciate their deep understanding of the land. Unlike some of the other ranch hands who viewed the Apache with suspicion, Jake had developed genuine friendships over the years. He spoke enough Apache to get by in basic conversations and always approached their territory with the proper respect. As Thunder climbed a steep ridge, Jake spotted movement in the valley below. 3 longhorn steers grazed near a small stream, exactly where the ranch foreman had predicted they would be. Jake smiled with satisfaction and began planning his approach. The cattle were skittish from their days in the wild, and he would need to move slowly to avoid spooking them. He dismounted and checked his rope, making sure it was properly coiled and ready for use. The afternoon heat was becoming unbearable, and Jake decided to rest in the shade of a large boulder before making his move on the cattle. Thunder seemed grateful for the break, lowering his head to nibble at the sparse grass growing in the shadow of the rock. Jake found a comfortable spot against the boulder and removed his hat to fan himself. The silence of the desert was profound, broken only by the occasional call of a hawk circling overhead. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the subtle sounds of the wilderness around him. It was then that he heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound that made his blood run cold. The distinctive rattle of a diamondback rattlesnake. And it was close. Very close. Jake's eyes snapped open, but he forced himself to remain perfectly still. Any sudden movement could trigger a strike from one of the most dangerous snakes in the Southwest. The rattling continued, seeming to come from directly beneath where he sat. Jake's mind raced as he tried to remember everything he knew about rattlesnake behavior. They typically avoided humans when possible, but if cornered or surprised, they could be deadly aggressive. The snake must have been resting in the cool shadow of the boulder when Jake had inadvertently trapped it by sitting down. Sweat beaded on Jake's forehead as he considered his options. Moving quickly might cause the snake to strike, but staying still indefinitely was not a solution either. The rattling grew more agitated, and Jake could sense the snake's growing anxiety at being trapped. Thunder, sensing his master's distress, began to paw the ground nervously. The horse's movement caught the attention of someone else in the area. From across the small valley, a figure emerged from behind a cluster of mesquite trees. It was an Apache woman, probably in her 40s. With long black hair braided down her back, she moved with the quiet confidence of someone completely at home in this harsh landscape. The woman spotted Jake immediately and began walking toward him with purposeful strides. As she drew closer, Jake could see the concern in her dark eyes. She had obviously heard the rattling and understood the dangerous situation he was in. When she was about 20 feet away, she stopped and called out in accented but clear English, "Cowboy, do not move. There is danger." Jake managed to speak without moving his head. "I know. There's a rattler right under me. I can hear it, but I can't see where it is exactly." The Apache woman moved closer, her eyes scanning the ground around Jake with the trained gaze of someone who had lived her entire life in rattlesnake country. She circled slowly, staying well back from the immediate danger zone. "The snake is coiled beneath the rock where your legs rest," she said quietly. "It is a large one, probably been sleeping in the cool shade. You surprised it when you sat down." Jake felt his mouth go dry. The snake was literally inches from his legs, and one wrong move could result in a potentially fatal bite. He was miles from the nearest doctor, and rattlesnake venom could kill a man in this remote area where help was far away. The woman continued her careful observation, occasionally moving a step or two to get a better angle of view. Her calm demeanor helped steady Jake's nerves, though his heart continued to pound against his ribs. "What's your name?" she asked. her voice remaining steady and reassuring. "Jake Henderson," he replied, grateful for the distraction of conversation. "I'm tracking cattle for the Double Bar Ranch." "I am Maria Crowfeather," she said. "This is my family's traditional gathering area. We come here for medicinal plants and to collect water from the spring." The rattling beneath Jake continued intermittently, a constant reminder of the deadly threat just below him. Maria studied the situation with the patience of someone who understood that rushing could mean the difference between life and death in the unforgiving desert. Maria Crowfeather moved with the deliberate grace of a hunter as she assessed the dangerous situation. She had encountered countless rattlesnakes throughout her life on the reservation, and she understood their behavior better than most. Her grandfather had taught her that patience and respect for the snake's nature were the keys to surviving such encounters. "Jake, I need you to listen carefully," Maria said, her voice calm but urgent. "The snake is coiled in a defensive position. It does not want to strike you any more than you want to be struck, but it feels trapped, which makes it very dangerous." Jake nodded slightly, not daring to make any larger movements. The sun was beginning to lower in the western sky, but the heat remained intense. Sweat dripped down his back, making his shirt stick to his skin. Every muscle in his body was tense with the effort of remaining absolutely still. Maria began gathering materials from the surrounding area. She collected several long, dry branches from a dead mesquite tree, testing each one for strength and flexibility. Her movements were quick but controlled, never making sudden gestures that might further agitate the hidden rattlesnake. "In my tribe, we have many stories about the rattlesnake," Maria said, continuing to talk while she worked. "We believe the snake is a powerful spirit that teaches us about patience and respect for all living things. Today, we must show this snake the respect it deserves." She selected the longest branch, approximately 6 feet in length, and carefully stripped away the smaller twigs and leaves. The wood was weathered and strong, perfect for her purpose. Jake watched her preparations with growing hope, though he still dared not move. "What are you planning to do?" Jake asked quietly. "I am going to give the snake a way to escape without feeling threatened," Maria explained. "The snake wants to leave just as much as you want it to leave. We must create an opportunity that feels safe for both of you." Thunder had moved closer during this time, his reins dragging on the ground. The horse seemed to sense the tension in the air and kept his distance while remaining alert to his master's distress. In the valley below, the 3 longhorn cattle continued grazing peacefully, unaware of the life and death drama playing out on the hillside above them. Maria approached from Jake's left side, moving with extraordinary care. She could now see a portion of the rattlesnake's thick, diamond-patterned body coiled beneath the overhang of the boulder. The snake was indeed large, probably 4 feet long and as thick as a man's wrist. Its rattles continued their ominous warning at irregular intervals. "I can see part of the snake now," Maria whispered. "It is beautiful, but very agitated. When I give you the signal, I want you to slowly lift your feet and move them toward me. But do not stand up yet. Keep your upper body still." Jake's legs had begun to cramp from maintaining the same position for so long, but he fought through the discomfort. The stakes were too high to risk any unnecessary movement. A diamondback rattlesnake's fangs could inject enough venom to kill a horse, let alone a man. Maria extended the long branch toward the space beneath the boulder, moving it slowly and steadily. She was not trying to touch or threaten the snake, but rather to provide it with a clear path away from Jake. The branch would serve as a guide, encouraging the snake to move in a direction that would take it away from immediate danger. The rattling intensified as the branch approached, but Maria continued her careful movements. She had learned from her elders that showing fear or making aggressive gestures would only escalate the situation. Instead, she maintained a respectful distance while offering the snake an escape route. "Now, Jake," she said softly, very slowly, "lift your right foot first and move it 6 inches toward me." Jake took a deep breath and began the terrifying process of moving, while a deadly snake lay coiled just below him. As he lifted his right foot, he heard the rattling increase dramatically. The snake was clearly aware of his movement and was warning him of the consequences of coming any closer. "Good," Maria encouraged. "Now the left foot. same distance. As Jake moved his left foot, disaster nearly struck. His boot caught on a small rock, causing him to shift his weight unexpectedly. The sudden movement triggered an explosive response from the rattlesnake. In a blur of motion, the snake struck upward, its fangs barely missing Jake's leg as he instinctively pulled back. The snake's momentum carried it partially out from under the boulder, giving both Jake and Maria their first clear look at their adversary. It was a magnificent specimen, with perfectly defined diamond patterns along its thick body, and a rattle containing at least 10 segments. The snake immediately recoiled and prepared for another strike, its head raised in a defensive S-curve. "Do not move," Maria commanded sharply. "It missed you. But it is now fully committed to defending itself." Jake's heart hammered so hard he could hear it in his ears. The near miss had come within inches of his leg, and he could see the wet venom glistening on the rocks where the fangs had struck. The reality of how close he had come to serious injury or death settled over him like a cold blanket. Maria adjusted her strategy now that the snake was partially visible. She used the branch to gently encourage the rattlesnake to move toward a natural gap between two smaller rocks. The snake, still agitated but no longer feeling completely trapped, began to respond to the subtle guidance. "It is working," Maria said quietly. "The snake is beginning to see a path to safety. We must be patient now and let it make the decision to leave." The desert around them had grown quiet except for the snake's warning rattles and the distant sound of wind through the canyon. Even thunder stood motionless, as if sensing that any disturbance could ruin their careful progress. Jake remained frozen in his awkward position, his muscles screaming from the strain but his will focused entirely on survival. The standoff continued for what felt like hours but was actually only 20 minutes. Maria maintained her gentle pressure with the branch, never threatening the snake but consistently offering it a clear path to freedom. The rattlesnake's behavior began to change gradually as it recognized that the humans were not pursuing or cornering it. Slowly, the snake began to uncoil itself from beneath the boulder. Its movement was deliberate and cautious, with frequent pauses to assess the situation. The rattling decreased in frequency and intensity as the snake realized it had options other than fighting. "It is beginning to trust the path I am showing it," Maria said quietly. "Soon, it will be far enough away for you to move safely." Jake watched in fascination as the snake's full length became visible. The rattlesnake was even larger than he had initially thought, probably close to 5 feet long, and magnificently adapted to desert life. Despite the terror of the situation, he could not help but admire the creature's perfect design for survival in this harsh environment. The snake paused when it was about halfway out from under the boulder, its head still raised in a defensive position. Maria remained perfectly still, allowing the snake to make its own decisions about the next move. This pause stretched on for several minutes, testing everyone's patience and nerve. Finally, the rattlesnake seemed to make up its mind. In one fluid motion, it completed its emergence from beneath the boulder and began moving toward the gap between the rocks that Maria had indicated with her branch. The snake's movement was smooth and purposeful, no longer the agitated defensive posturing of a trapped animal. "Now you can move," Maria said, but still slowly and carefully. Jake gradually shifted his position away from the boulder, his cramped muscles protesting with every movement. As he gained distance from the snake's former hiding place, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. The immediate danger was passing, but he maintained his caution until the snake was completely clear of the area. The rattlesnake continued its retreat, moving with surprising speed once it felt secure in its escape route. Within minutes, it had disappeared into a crevice between larger rocks about 30 feet away. The desert silence returned, broken only by the sound of Jake's heavy breathing and the distant lowing of cattle. "Thank you," Jake said, his voice shaky with the aftermath of adrenaline. "You saved my life." "I don't know what I would have done without your help," Maria smiled, the first time Jake had seen her expression soften since she had appeared. "The snake did not want to hurt you any more than you wanted to be hurt. Sometimes we just need to help each other find a way to coexist." As they both relaxed from the tension, Jake stood and stretched his cramped muscles. He retrieved his hat from where it had fallen during the ordeal and looked around the landscape with new appreciation for both its beauty and its dangers. "I have lived in this desert my entire life," Maria said. And I have learned that respect and patience solve more problems than fear and aggression. That snake was just trying to rest in the shade, same as you. Jake nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. I've been working ranches for 30 years, but I've never had an experience quite like this one. I'm grateful you happened to be in the area. I was gathering herbs for my grandmother's medicines, Maria explained, gesturing toward a canvas bag partially filled with desert plants. She is teaching me the old ways of healing. And many of the best plants grow near this spring. They walked together toward the water source, where Maria rinsed her hands and offered Jake a drink from the clear stream. The water was cold and refreshing after the stress and heat of the afternoon. Thunder approached cautiously, also eager to drink after the long ordeal. What will you do about the cattle? Maria asked, nodding toward the 3 steers still grazing in the valley below. I'll come back tomorrow with more help, Jake replied. After today, I think I need a different approach to this job. Maria laughed softly. Perhaps you should bring someone who knows the land better. My cousin Roberto works cattle sometimes. He could help you gather those strays safely. The idea appealed to Jake immediately. Working with someone familiar with the area would be much safer and more efficient than trying to handle the job alone. I would appreciate that very much. How can I contact him? Come to the trading post near the reservation boundary tomorrow morning, Maria said. Ask for Roberto Crowfeather. Tell him I sent you, and that you need help with cattle near the sacred spring. As the sun began to set behind the western mountains, painting the desert in brilliant oranges and purples, Jake prepared to head back to the ranch. The day had taken an unexpected turn, but he had gained something valuable beyond just surviving a dangerous encounter. Maria, he said as he mounted Thunder, I want you to know that I will never forget what you did today. If there is ever anything I can do to help you or your family, please let me know. She nodded graciously. In the desert, we help each other survive. That is the way it has always been, and the way it should always be. Jake rode away from the spring with a new understanding of the land he had worked for so many years. The encounter with the rattlesnake had been terrifying, but the kindness and wisdom of Maria Crowfeather had turned a potentially tragic situation into a lesson about cooperation and respect. The next morning, Jake returned to the trading post as promised. He met Roberto, who proved to be as skilled and knowledgeable as his cousin had suggested. Together, they successfully rounded up the stray cattle without incident, using techniques that showed proper respect for both the animals and the land. Years later, Jake would tell the story of the rattlesnake and the Apache woman who saved his life. But more importantly, the experience changed how he approached his work and his relationships with the people who had called the desert home long before he arrived. The cowboy and the Apache woman had found common ground in a moment of danger, creating a friendship that would last for many years to come.